Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Branch Podcast. Thank you for joining us. Today, Pastor Anthony and I sit down and discuss something that I think is going to be a big encouragement to you. We talk about the difference of how culture defines greatness versus Jesus, and then we spend a lot of time with practical application. And this is the part I think is going to be a blessing to you because we talk about friendships and relationships and marriage. We talk about just how we respond in a work environment, in our roles in leadership. And I think it's going to be something that challenges and encourages you. And if it does that, as always, we ask you to share with family and friends. So thank you for joining us, and we pray that this is a blessing to you. All right, so if you had to look at all your talents and abilities and pick one that you think makes you most likely to be able to do that at the Olympics, okay? So yeah, if you had to qualify for one Olympic event, what's your best chance?
You know, now that when you ask that, like if I'm thinking currently, that's a great question.
I'm saying any point in your life,
okay,
you at your best version of you.
Yeah, so I've told this story before. So for those who don't know, I did high jump in college, but at my high school track meet, so I got 7th place in the state of Ohio. But I happened to jump that same year, who was also a senior when I was a senior. I didn't directly jump up against him, but he actually ended up, I think it was 2012, he won the silver medal in high jump for the United States, but then it was later on bumped to gold medal. His name was Eric Kennard. So also from Ohio, jumped the same year, senior year. Mm-hmm. So that's about as close as I probably would ever get to saying that. Yeah. You know, I could say I jumped against a former Olympian.
All right. So if you had to pick something different, though, different than high jump,
I don't know. Maybe like shooting.
So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, shooting. Like I've always been this might surprise people, I think, over the years, like with how I do my hair and stuff. People are surprised that I'm actually very outdoorsy. I grew up that way. So it's hard to gross me out or freak me out with bugs, snakes. Like I could live in the woods legitimately. But I've always like shooting from the time I was young, whether it be archery, guns. I was pretty good with it. And
so what's the connection with how you do your hair? What was that?
I think people look at like a certain style, right? Even just the way that I do my hair, it doesn't look like somebody who's like an outdoorsman. You know what I mean? I think people, people stereotype the way that you look, the way that you dress. There's that kind of like classic, or you're not wearing a Realtree hat with a fishing hook on it. So you must not be into hunting or outdoors. So I think over the years, people just have been surprised because of that stereotypical image of what someone looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember the last Olympics? There was that one dude, I think he was from some like Eastern European country.
From Turkey.
That shot without like any of the fancy equipment.
Yes.
I just was talking to my wife about this and I was like, that gave me hope. That's the event.
Did he win silver?
I want to say he did medal. Yeah. And I've always been a really good shot too.
That's awesome.
And I just have really, really good hand-eye coordination, especially when it comes to shooting. And so I was like, when I saw that, I'm like, that could have been my sport. The other one is, have you ever seen the sport? It's like soccer, but with hands, like in a gym. Like,
no.
So, I mean, like I'm combining it, but I don't know if it's called a handball, but it's like, they throw it around. No one's dribbling. So it's like on a basketball court, but then they're just like throwing it in the net. And it looks like something that got made up for kids who were stuck in a gym and they had a small ball and they go like, let's
I love
play
stuff
this.
Like that.
Yeah.
Just like
and when I watch it though, I think you don't even have to be incredibly athletic. It just looks like you have to be able to throw the ball really well and jog around. So I'm like, maybe that one.
Ultimate Frisbee. I was pretty good at that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like back in the day when we do that, I had a lot of fun with that. Like so I was a person, apart from like high jump, I would say, especially in my college, high school years, like I was pretty athletic. Most sports I could, even if I didn't know much about it, like I could hang with you, which is why I joke to this day about certain sports that you just can't rely on like sheer athleticism, like golf for one. You just can't be athletic enough to be a great golfer. You might be able to smack the ball, but you'll end up slicing it. There's too much technique. But when I was younger, I feel like I could hang in a lot of different sports.
Yeah. All right. Well, today's discussion is we're going to be talking about greatness. And so just to acknowledge, Chris isn't with us because Chris is taking a couple of weeks off, finishing up his master's. We took off so much time in the summer. We just didn't want to just keep taking off more. So we decided, let's just go without Chris. And there might be some weeks coming up where one of us is missing. It's just two of us. But all right, real quick though, we're talking about greatness. Jordan or LeBron, just one or the other. Come on, give it to me.
I can't always give a straightforward answer. So for those who don't know, I'm from Canton, which is 20 minute south
you're LeBron
of
guy,
Akron, which is where LeBron's from. So I'm a Northeastern Ohio guy, Cleveland sports. There'll always be a special place with LeBron. However, if I was being completely unbiased, I think I would go Jordan.
Oh, come on. I love it, man. Yeah, Jordan. Yeah. All right. Yeah, Jordan's the best. No question. All right. We can continue our discussion since we settled that.
Now. All
right. So on Sunday, we're continuing in our Following Jesus series, and I was teaching on the idea of what greatness is. Our culture defines it one way. Jesus really is the opposite of our culture. So I just want to continue that discussion today. And my hope is to really take it a little bit deeper than we could even on a Sunday of talking about how does this actually practically play out in life? How does it play out in conflict resolution, in relationships, in the work environment, in our witness? So first, let's just talk about if we're defining greatness, as you look at it, how do you think our culture defines greatness?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to do with achievement or success, in the sense that even if you go down the lane of notoriety, like someone being well known, famous, having influence, it's almost always because they are successful in something, right? They've achieved something great, whether it's a Jeff Bezos who happens to be, worth hundreds of billions of dollars because he made this massive Amazon empire, or it's Michael Jordan, who's known as the greatest basketball player of all time because he was so dominant, did what so few other basketball players could do. Not only made a fortune of it, but really in a lot of ways, like brought basketball to the center of the national limelight in that people were very attracted to it and drawn to it because of what he did. So you could look at all these people throughout history, the people who are great, they had to do something with achievement. I mean, even like you think World War II, or Abraham Lincoln in the Civil War, like certain leaders that led countries, nations through conflicts and were able to, with wisdom and strength, navigate, complex situations. It's almost always tied to something that somebody did, right? In achieving something great. And because of that achievement, oftentimes it comes with money, comes with fame, but we see them as great because of what they accomplish.
Yeah. And one of the things I hope that we don't get confused on is none of that's wrong.
Sure.
Right. I mean, like being great, even in the eyes of the world, is not something that Jesus is condemning.
Right.
Because, I mean, those people, many of them were people of faith. They were following their convictions, and they just accomplished good things. But so then where does it become a problem? I think that's the tension is, I mean, I think inside of each one of us is a drive to be successful, to achieve greatness as defined by culture, but also just success as defined from ourselves. Like we just want to not fail at things. So, I mean, where does the tension then come where Jesus is talking about what true greatness is? I mean, like, how is someone to process that, to go like, how do I know that my pursuit of something that brings me joy, something that I enjoy, that I feel like uniquely gifted in, how can I do that without contradicting what Jesus commands us to do?
Yeah, I think what you said is important, because what we're not saying is that Christians should try to be mediocre in the things of life, right? Like, I think there is a sense in which Christians should try to be great, in that we should strive for excellence in whatever we do. And I think that actually echoes scripture, like that we want to glorify God. If you're a teacher, if you're a janitor, like it doesn't matter what you do for a living. It doesn't matter whether you're married, whether you have friendships, all of those different dynamics of life. What does it look like, right? To be a great friend, to be a great spouse, to be a great teacher, to be a great nurse. Like we should want to do all of those things as well as we can do them. But I think it comes down to motivation. And what I would say about that, like greatness often defined in secular terms really is less about a person's character and personality and the way that they carry themselves or interact with others, and more about their achievement. And I would say the achievement part, or the successful part, is less important to God than the way that we carry ourselves, the way that we view ourselves, the way that we treat other people. So it has to do more with, we might say, character over competency, right? So defining greatness based on like, what is our heart posture towards God? Number one, like that is the thing, is in the kingdom of God, you could have someone like a Jeff Bezos who's worth, whatever he is now, $200 billion, and has a $500 million mega yacht. And in the eyes of the world is just absolutely killing it at life, but is small in the eyes of God, right? Because his posture towards God, and I don't know Jeff Bezos' posture towards God, but at the end of the day, like, if it's not a humble posture where he's seeking to glorify and honor God, and even recognizing his own frailty and mortality as a human being, and recognizing that everything that he has is because God allows it, like, then in the eyes of God, and in the eyes of in the perspective of the kingdom of God, he's not great, right? And even more so, as you talked about on Sunday, what do we do with what we have? So if you're a person, and I think people can resonate with this, right? Because there have been many, many people over the years, whether they're celebrities, people who are seen as great, but to be frank, are just terrible people. Like we hear the stories of how they treat the waiter or the waitress at the restaurant, and those types of situations. And that, there's something about that bothers us, and it should, right? Because there's something there that tells us there's actually more to this idea of being great than just what you achieve in this life. It actually has to do with your character, your heart posture, your motivations, and how do you treat people? Like, who are you behind closed doors? And I
mean, from my perspective, when you look at our culture, there are those who are the greatest of the great, and I would say like the legends. And usually when you talk about the legends, I mean, the ones that literally last generations, where it could be hundreds of years where they're being celebrated, they really did add value to humanity in some capacity. Like, I mean, the Abraham Lincolns are celebrated and will continue to be celebrated because of what they did. And he wasn't wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. And so like some of the other ways that we have measured greatness didn't apply to him, but because of his lasting effects. I feel the same way about poets and authors, even scientists who created different things that are a lot like the person who discovered antibiotics, right? It's like lasting effects. But I think what happens is in every generation, we're defining temporary greatness. And that's where I think the problem lies oftentimes is we're not talking about living in such a way to make a lasting impact. We're talking about living in such a way that makes you really happy and it gives you temporary popularity or comforts. And that's where the problem is when we're running after that level of greatness, that falls way short of, I think, how we're designed by God and also commanded by Jesus to live. And so you're right. It's not about character. It's about an image. And so we can have these billionaires that we would celebrate, but I don't know that we're going to celebrate for generations. I even think in my own mind, like even some of the great wealthy people of the past that ultimately did nothing really for the world. They're remembered in a sense of, oh yeah, they were really rich, but you don't see them the same. Like, the Vanderbilts, even Rockefeller to some degree, like these incredibly wealthy people, but you're going, but where's the lasting impact?
Legacy?
The legacy. That's a great way. Yeah. And so like when we talk about with Jesus, I mean, I think that's what he's ultimately talking about is an eternal legacy, right? It's an eternal impact that will impact those around you in this generation and generations to come. Okay, so when we think about this in our lives then, okay, so Jesus is defining greatness differently. Our world can be temporary. What is Jesus' definition of greatness? So like if you were to sit down with him, like I talked about on Sunday, like the question the disciples asked was actually not a good question. They're like, how can we be great in heaven? They're literally saying, how can we have a position in heaven? They weren't saying,
how can we
like,
be somebody?
How can we be someone? And in their minds, the same like here on earth. If you were to have a genuine conversation with Jesus and go, how can I be great as you define greatness? What do you think Jesus' answer would be to that?
Yeah, I mean, you alluded to even Jesus like bringing the child, right? Like this idea of, and we see this show up actually a couple of times, like the idea of childlike faith. You put that in terms for someone who may never have heard this, like the idea of like a child receives a gift and they do it joyfully. And there's also a sense in which a child is dependent and they don't care that they're dependent. There is no pride, there's no ego involved.
They forgive so easily, don't they?
They're just present to the reality of life and they're not caught up in themselves oftentimes the way that we are. And so I think there's some of that element of like the joyfulness, the playfulness, the self-forgetfulness, as you kind of talked about with the quote from C.S. Lewis, right? The idea that we're not so focused on ourselves all the time and our image and what people think of us and how we can constantly obtain something that's going to make us feel good about ourselves, because our entire basis for even self-worth is like, what do people think of me?
Right. Yeah.
And so even that, I think it flips it on its head, because I think Jesus would say to us, at a very deep level, right? Our self-worth, our identity, first and foremost, flows out of the fact that we are children of God, right? Like the John 1:12, that he's given us this incredible right. It's not everybody's made in the image of God, but not everybody is a child of God. That has to do with a specific relationship. And we get invited into this incredible relationship with him, that we are called his children. And that becomes the foundation of our identity. And I actually think that the reason why I think that's an important part of this conversation is because of what I said prior to that. I think our obsession with greatness is actually very much tied to our identity, that we feel this weight of that our lives are not significant. Our lives are not significant unless we make a lot of money. Our lives are not significant unless we're known by a lot of people. Nowadays, we know, like, the stats are out there, the younger generation, the idea of being a social media influencer is one of the top desired things. Like, people want to be an influencer. They want to have a large social media platform. Why? Because it makes them feel great. It makes them feel significant and important. So I think for the Christian, there's that element of it tied to our identity, that we have to be content with being loved by God, like that we have a relationship with him. And no matter what we achieve in this world, our identity is rooted in his love for us. But at a deeper level, I think greatness then is out of the overflow of that identity. It's being willing to share that love with the world around us. And so in the eyes of the world today, greatness, and you alluded to this, I think, perfectly, like the people who have a lasting legacy are the people who used what God gave them, whether they were Christians or not, right? Like they used what God gave them at that specific opportunity and moment to do great good for other people, to do great good for the nation, to do great good for the world. And I would say that is how Jesus defines greatness, in that, what do we do with what we've been given for the sake of others in the name of Jesus, right? So like, we are reflecting his heart, his character in the way that we care for others. And so the posture of humility that says, I'm not going to live life to get what I want. I'm not going to live life to be self-serving. I'm actually going to live my life in such a way that I realize everything that's been given to me is a gift, and I want to steward it well to be a blessing to those around me.
Yeah, for sure. I love what you said about having your identity in Christ first, because you think about it, if you don't have that, what else is going to define your identity? And you're going to be controlled by it. You're going to be manipulated, because there is, I think, there's a God-given need inside of us to know that we are accomplishing purpose. I mean, that's one way I can say it. And so if the world says this is what purpose is, you'll run after it. But when you have your identity in Christ, I mean, genuinely believe, like, he is happy with you. It allows you to be settled in whatever season you're in. So even if it doesn't meet the standards of the world, you're okay with it. Because I do think there is that ongoing tension. Like, I remember years ago, I did a sermon, and I was talking about, it might have even been on this passage of scripture. When I say years ago, I'm talking like 10, 15 years ago. But I remember I said the question to the audience. I go, I'm going to say this, and I want you in your mind to tell me which one is greater. Again, this is just rhetorical, but in your mind, think about it. And I said, a person who works at a fast food place and a doctor. And I was like, all right, did you answer it in your head? And the crowd's like nodding. And I said, I didn't give you enough information to make that decision, because it could be this person that works in a fast food place is leading and discipling all of the people around them toward Christ Jesus. They are incredibly generous. This other person is selfish. And I think the point I was trying to make is, like, the worldly standards don't define greatness. But again, it goes back. The only way you can do that, I think, without having internal turmoil, is being settled in your identity with Christ. Because otherwise, it is a tension that you walk around feeling like a failure. Because others might even view you that way until they know you. And then I love where that leads is, once you understand that, like you were just saying, it does lead you to treat everything in your life as a ministry, to be more generous with it. Why do you think it is naturally happen that when you follow the greatness of our world, it leads to pushing people down? whereas following Jesus leads to lifting people up. Like, why is that? Because I think some people might even struggle with that and say, like, I don't know that I even agree with that premise. But yet I think we see it over and over in every generation that when you're running after temporary greatness, it usually means you're walking over people.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the foundation of that mindset is self-seeking. So I think when your entire posture and the motivation behind the things that you're chasing after in life is self-seeking, meaning you're trying to do what makes you happy. You're trying to do, even as you were just alluding to, like you're trying to define what greatness is, and if greatness is making an insane amount of money, it's beating out your employees to get the promotion, it's whatever, fill in the blank. If your idea of greatness is those things, it's going to lead you to do whatever it takes to get to that platform.
Yeah.
Right. And so oftentimes to get in this rat race that we call life, to get to those places, it causes people to compromise things that they normally and maybe other situations might not be willing to do, but because it ultimately is the thing that's going to lead them to that definition of greatness, that job promotion, or to be, like even today you think of like social media influencers. I know we've had conversations before that a lot of times there's entire social media platforms that seem to be built on, like, whether it's celebrity gossip, whether it's slandering other churches and ministries or pastors. And again, I'm not saying that there may be not a time to call out certain things and address them, but you look at that today and it's like, it feels very much like people are willing to compromise on things that on paper they would say, yeah, you shouldn't do that. Shouldn't treat people that way. And yet we're willing to do it when it's our future on the line, when it's our personal preference on the line, when it's our happiness on the line. So I think the simple basis of it is that God's kingdom is other focused, first and foremost, in that we're living to the glory of God, not to our own glory. So that's a different orientation of life, that I want to glorify God. I'm not seeking after my own glory. I'm not seeking after the praise of people. And then secondly, one of the primary or chief ways that I bring glory to God is by seeking the welfare of other people around me, that God is pleased in that. Why? Because it reflects his heart to the world. It makes his invisible presence visible in the way that I live my life. And so that's the kingdom of God. The kingdom of this world is to do things that are self-seeking. You have to go after what makes you happy and what pleases you and what fits your personality and preferences. And it's very, very me-centered. And we've talked many times, I think, like in the billion dollar marketing industry is built on this idea. It's about the consumer, the person. You get what you want and we can help you get what you want.
Yeah, I mean, I see it in my children in that there are some families, and I'm not saying this to lift us up and tear someone down. I'm really not. But I see in our family, there are certain things that we've celebrated over the years, and I see my kids do it because they love us. They want my respect. They want Mary's respect. And so they're doing these healthy things that we've celebrated. And then you'll see other families that celebrate other things. And I'm not even saying they're bad, but they're other things. And so the kids run after that. And you realize, what is it? It's because they love their parents. They want their parents praised. And for us as children of God, we love him, and we have to, it should be in our hearts to run after the things that he praises, that he celebrates. And it really does change things. You were alluding to the idea of like people begin to tear other people down, like even on social media. Maybe I've used this example before. But there was somewhat of a scandal a couple of years ago. I'm not going to name it specifically because it would be honestly doing exactly what I'm about to criticize. But there was a scandal in the church world, and there was these two influencers that had completely different purposes of their social media. One was a comedian. The other two were talking about other things. But both of them, in a roundabout way, did a post or a story, like a reel on this scandal. And that reel had more views, more shares, more likes, anything else. And both of them pivoted to turning their pages basically into the TMZ of the Christian world, where they're exposing every potential fault in every single church. And again, I agree with you that there should be accountability and people being called out. I'm not criticizing that in and of itself, but this wasn't that. This was like the gossip thing of it. And I remember it was gross to me, and it is because of this. They're trying to tear down because it gets them the popularity and views. And it was like so weird to me, but I think that is it. That's the temptation. And like, I think about it on the most simple ways as I'm driving around, like, this is in me. that tension, because like even literally when I'm driving, like you think about it, like when two lanes are merging because there's construction up, what don't you want to get as far up as possible before you have to get over? Like you want to be the guy who gets in just before it's too much, because you don't want to be that guy that waits too long and everyone thinks the total jerk.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you want to get in, and it's like, what is that? I want to pass all of these cars. I want to put myself ahead. And I think there is that tension, even for me as a parent. Like if my kids are playing sports, there's like, it's that internal tension. So like I was watching one of my kids this week play sports, and the team is not doing well. Like they're just not going to win anything this year. It's just being realistic. Maybe they could get better, I should say. But I'm saying like right now, it's not going well.
Yeah.
And there was this moment in the game where we actually had a chance to win. And I looked out there, and it wasn't our best lineup out there. And for a moment, I thought, oh, I wish the coach would sub some of these players out and get the other players in because we have a chance to win. And as soon as I thought that, I went, no, I don't. No. Like I stopped, and like the more logical side of me goes, no, this is a great opportunity for all of them to get playing time. This game doesn't matter. Like middle school sports, like it doesn't matter, right? And I was looking at it, and I go, no, this is a good thing. But it's like, I think there has to be an intentionality to remind our minds and hearts of like, no, we got to serve other people. We have to desire for them to do well. But it's not natural.
It is not.
So let me then pivot and go, okay, so I think we've set a good foundation. If they saw the sermon on Sunday, there's a good foundation there. But now I want to talk about, how does this practically look like in our lives? Okay, when we talk about embracing Jesus in a posture of his greatness, of like he said, I came not to be served, but to serve and to give my life as a ransom for many. What does it look like? So I want to name in a few things. Like if you're in leadership, so that could be church leadership, business leadership, any form of leadership. So we're just going to go down these. I'm just kind of prepping you. What does it look like in relationships in general? What does it look like in marriage? What does it look like in work? So as we start to define those things, let me just throw the first one in leadership. You're in a position of leadership. You're our campus pastor. So you're a pastor at Tree.Church whole, but you're also the campus pastor of Tree.Church Logan. For a person that's listening, what does it look like in a practical sense to be in leadership over people, but yet in a posture that serves? Because that feels like an odd contradiction, right?
Absolutely. And I want to touch base, I already shared with you personally, I was really glad when you spoke this Sunday, you shared about the whole celebrity pastor thing, because it's always been something that's bothered me. Like personally, I just think it's really gross because of the model that Jesus set. Like if the pastor is supposed to be the chief person in the church representing the heart of Christ, and you're basically saying you're too good to mingle with your people, the same Savior you claim to follow, who laid his life down, who washed the dirty feet of his disciples. Like, what are we missing here?
Let me speak that for a second, then I want you to finish your thought. I didn't have time to expound on it. I literally sat in rooms and talked with people who were saying the larger your church gets, the more you have to create a barrier between you and the people. The stuff they were talking about, and this was like the executive team under the lead pastor that was saying, like, you have to create like a space for this person, basically turning them into a celebrity that's untouchable. And as they're talking about it, I'm listening to this going, there's no way in the world I'll ever be in an environment like that. And the problem was, I heard this on so many different places that I just thought, this is gross. And then on the flip side, I went to places like Saddleback, where Rick Warren is literally out in the parking lot.
It's just so crazy.
Hugging people, literally hundreds of people a week. Like his staff followed him one time with a counter and counted, and he hugged like 360 people. And then or Matt Chandler in Dallas that goes out in the lobby every single week, does more weddings and funerals than anyone else. Like, and you see these other examples and you go, that's Christ-like. So anyway, in my mind, like I was alluding to it, but like that was that tension I was feeling.
Well, the reason I love that you talked about it is because I do think there are a lot of people in our culture today that are sensitive to that mentality, and I think if we as pastors are not leading the way in what it means to be for people and to model the heart of Christ, then what hope does the rest of the church have in following that example, that Jesus set forth? Like, we are the ones who are supposed to be the chief example to the church. And I don't know if I had shared this with you or not, but I actually had a 16-year-old guy come up to me on Sunday at the Logan campus, and he had addressed what you had talked about with the celebrity pastor thing and just some of his experiences. And then he was raving about our our staff culture of just like being down to earth. And
Right.
I just thought, like, it touched my heart that
Sure.
here a 16-year-old guy is sharing this in like in a format that he wanted it to be a blessing to us, just to encourage us. But it's like, that is the heart that we want to have. And so I think in leadership, like for me personally, like one of my chief desires is to, like, the way that I see my role is, how can I be a support to you when I'm looking at my staff? How can I set you up for success? How can I make it so that you feel like I'm not looking at performance. I'm looking at you as a person, in that I'm caring for you. I'm caring for you spiritually. I'm making sure you have everything that you need, that you feel supported. So it is that a pivot that I think sometimes in the leadership world, particularly in the secular marketplace, at an organization, a company, the mindset is that the CEO, the people who are higher up, that the people beneath them serve their interests. They're at their beck and call to do what they want them to do. And I get that to some degree. Leaders make decisions, and those under you have to follow that. But I think there's a difference in mindset, seeing it as, this is an opportunity for me to love my people, serve my people, bless their lives, bless their families even. So what does it look like for me as a leader to be able to, like, if you're in a company that makes millions and millions of dollars, like, what does it look like for you to financially bless your people who work so hard for you?
Right.
And what does it look like to even be intentional in getting to know their names, getting to know the names of their spouses and their kids, to actually care about them as human beings, not just as people who are producing something for you and for your company. I think it's a flipping of the script that says, I have been gifted with this incredible privilege and yet responsibility of leading. It's not just to take my company or whatever it is to make more profits. That might be a part of it, but it's, what does it look like for me to steward this influence that God has given to me in this position, to be able to love and serve the people underneath me, rather than seeing them as people who exist to serve my interests. Right. So it's a complete 180 in the way that we think. And so as a campus pastor now, just coming in as the start of the Logan campus, I want to be able to, like, I would love next year for our staff to be able to say, like, we know Anthony cares about us. Like, we know that he takes the time to do that. And I would say the same thing, the people who are attending our church, that next year, I want to know hundreds of names. I want to know hundreds of names that I don't know right now, because I want people to feel known. I want people to feel seen. I want people to feel cared for.
And I don't think anyone would doubt your words, but literally you and I had a private conversation earlier today where you said those two things to me, that you wanted to love your staff well.
Sure.
And also you want to know names. So like that was a different conversation, had nothing to do with the podcast. No, I 100% agree. I think so often our mindset in leadership is basically, everyone beneath me is there to lift me up. And I think leadership, there is an interesting dynamic in that you're still leading. So you're still pointing the way. There's still tough conversations that have to happen in that, because you're challenging people, you're confronting people, but it has to be the image that you're in the midst of them together, walking towards something. And I know for me, I mean, I've shared this before, but just a few years ago, I mean, now I keep saying a few years ago. Do you do that where like it's been 10 years?
Yeah, it was a few years ago, 10 years ago.
Right, exactly. But many years ago, I said to the elders, I realized that the greatest value I could add to our church was first through just making sure we have a correct vision from God, then teaching, because I do that as a primary teacher. But the third was, I want to love our staff well. I want to invest in them well. And it is all the things that you were saying, of like getting to know them and their stories. And that's why, like, there's intentionality. And the only reason I'm sharing this is to give examples for leaders, not to lift myself up. But that's why, like, every single day I'm intentional to come out of my office and sit and just talk and ask questions. Like we just did it before we came in here, where there's a couple of staff members I don't know as well, because they're on our team more recent, like within the last year and a half. And so you just sit down and just ask questions and talk to them and get to know about their lives. And then to follow up with that. And like you're saying, to know their kids, know the problems that's going on, so you can privately encourage them, to create opportunities for their families to feel loved. So like we do multiple events a year where we invite all of the staff kids and spouses, because we want them to know we don't just love you because you're a worker. We love the whole you. And the whole you is all your relational dynamics and families. And I even appreciate today. So one of the things that I've done for years is to remember our staff and give them a gift for their birthdays and their anniversaries. Your heart today was, can I start doing that now with my staff? And that's a cool thing where I'm like, yeah, I'm sad that I'm giving it up, in the sense that I've loved these people, but like in my mind, it's so comforting my heart to go, they're going to now transition to a place where they're going to continue to be loved. I really was touched by the fact that you initiated that. What was funny, I didn't tell you this, is we had our conversation about 5 minutes later, Molly sent me your email to her, and I said, it's already handled. We've already talked about it. But you initiated because like you were owning that, to say, I want to love them well. And again, that is Jesus-like leadership is looking at your staff, not saying, how can they serve me well? It's how can I love them well?
Right.
The benefit of it is your staff will actually perform better for you.
Yeah.
And they'll accomplish the vision better, and your business in the business world will do better because they're going to represent you well. They're going to serve harder.
They're going to flourish. As human beings.
And they're going to love your customers better.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no downside to it.
It's almost like the way of God works,
Right, exactly. But that's even like on Sunday, I said it, and I actually think it became the clip that they put on social media. But I was like in it saying, understand this, when you follow it, it's better for you.
Yeah.
It legitimately makes you happier, but it's better for everyone around you.
Yeah.
And when you thrive and everyone else around you thrives, to me, it's like a synergy effect. Like, and we all know this, like if your wife or spouse is thriving and you're thriving, that's what you want. You don't want to be thriving and your spouse struggling.
Yeah.
Same with your kids. When everyone's thriving, it's like the quality of life is better.
Yeah.
And in leadership, you influence that. Okay.
100%.
So let's talk about then in the relational side. Let's go marriage first. Marriage. I think in marriage where it's so difficult, and I'll speak for my marriage and see if you're similar. In my marriage, and I talked about this on Sunday a little bit, when Mary and I are seeing eye to eye, it's not hard to serve her. Is that fair in your marriage too, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're seeing eye to eye, it's like marriage is easy, right?
Yeah.
It is having that humble posture, honestly, when you disagree. And this is a struggle that I'm going through, even in this current season. Mary and I are just like trying to work through the different ways that we think and we communicate, the different ways that we respond to things. And honestly, like my posture is to defend myself. My posture is to say, I think you and I are wired very, very similar, where I would rather have a debate and get to it, and even in the process, potentially change my mind. But I want to debate it first. And I'm realizing my wife, she does not feel loved in that. Like, and she's even used that language of going, I'm like, well, like, again, it's just the difference of this. Like, you'll laugh at it because I'm sure you're similar. But in my mind, it is loving to debate it. In my mind, like, let's debate this, and then we'll come to whatever is truth. We'll both be better for it, and we're going to communicate better in the future. And she literally says, when I say this thing to you and you want to debate, I don't feel loved in that moment. And like for a while, I almost wanted to explain to her why that doesn't make sense, right? Like I wanted to debate that. And I honestly, the Holy Spirit's convicted me to go, that's not truly loving her. Loving her is to go, how do you receive love?
Yeah.
And then let me do that. So does that relate to you in your marriage? I mean, like how do you as a husband, how do you best love Micaiah, like in your marriage to serve her while also being in one part leader, husband, still having your own wants, desires, personality, preference? Like, how do you mesh that to serve her well?
Well, I think, I mean, we were hinting at it, but I think the reality that we can acknowledge is it's hard, right? It's hard in marriage. It's hard in every realm. Like the irony is we're saying it's always better. God's ways are always better for everybody. The problem is our natural inclination is not to do God's way, it's to do our way. And so that's really what muddies the waters. And I think just if I can preach for a second here, I mean, absolutely. I think it's like when we're talking about marriage, I think one of the biggest reasons people end up in divorce or end up in a crisis in their marriage is they automatically go into marriage with the assumption that all of their needs and all of their wants are going to be met by this individual that they're madly in love with, right? And so what they don't recognize and realize in that is that your selfishness is also the very thing that is going to destroy the marriage. And so when you see that, like the tension of it is that marriage is both you denying yourself to serve your spouse, but also God has set it up in such a way that that person that you're trying to love and to serve is also one of the greatest blessings in your life. And so the issue is when we try to take them and make them the ultimate, I would say this really is a form of idolatry when we see our spouse as the single person who's supposed to take care of all of our needs. And when they inevitably fail because they too are a fallen human being who have different personalities and different opinions about things, you're going to feel let down at times. But that's because, again, your entire mindset, I think, oftentimes is wrong. And when I say yours, I think mine, like many times has been wrong in that I've expected that from Micaiah, and she's not able to do that 100% of the time. So I do think it's the same exact dynamic with what we talked about with leadership. It's recognizing years ago, and maybe you've heard this before too. I've used this actually a lot of times in premarital counseling. Like when you're not trying to make your spouse more like yourself, but both of you are trying to be more like Jesus, well, now you're not the standard, they're not the standard. Christ is the standard, and it gives this mutual accountability of what does it actually look like to for both of us to move towards Christ. And as we move towards Christ, we move closer together in intimacy because the way that we interact and relate to one another is more Christ-like. Yeah. And so just that idea of, like, as you said, what does it mean for me to even listen attentively to Micaiah and say, okay, we've been off lately, right? We've been off. I don't know what's going on. Let's have a conversation about that. Right. I just want to know, like, have I not been affectionate? Have I not given words of affirmation to encourage you? Have I not seemed appreciative lately? Maybe I felt disconnected. Maybe I've been on my phone too much. But I think even that posture that says, it should be my job. If both spouses have that posture, it should be my job to try to pursue that, to say, what can I do to hear your heart? What can I do to understand? And actually listen to understand, not to defend, right? Because that's the thing that we do. Yeah. That's the thing that we do. We immediately have these dialogues and these conversations, and we're so quick, right? It's like touching a bruise. You're like, you just react, and you want to defend, and you want to say, well, that's not right, or that's a mischaracterization of who I am, or what I said, or what I meant. But we always have to realize, like, we should try to get behind that, to the heart of, I want to understand so that I can better love.
You just said something in passing just a few minutes ago that was so interesting to me, because I don't know if I've ever heard someone say it this way, but you said, we got to quit trying to make them like us, or something to that effect. Yeah. And I just realized that is exactly what we're doing in marriage oftentimes, is trying to make them like us.
Yep.
I want you to talk like me, think like me, act like me, desire things like I desire. And you're right. And that's the opposite of serving someone, because you're trying to mold them into your image instead of loving them. And that's a challenge.
Yeah. This just made me think, because you went to see Nate Bargatze. Right. I don't know if you heard that bit where he talks about that, where his wife is talking about going to the airport at a certain time, and the way she responds. And she says at the end, I'm sorry, I don't talk the way you want me to talk. And he said, I just want you to talk like a normal person. Yeah. But it is. Yeah, it is. That was what I realized years ago, is that what we're trying to do is we have certain preferences that are geared towards our personality type, or even our upbringing, right? Yeah. Certain dynamics, culture that we're used to, and we're trying to get our spouse to become more like us, so that we have less friction and less conflict, rather than saying, okay, what part of this is actually not like the heart of God? Like, what part of my attitude and my mindset is not like Jesus? I need to change that then. Right. Not have her become more like me in that, but I need to become more like Jesus. And if she has that same mentality, what a blessing that will be to our marriages, if we're both pursuing Christ and we're not trying to make each other like the other person because we're tired of the way that they organize the house, or they do this or do that. And those little things that become big things in marriage, because again, oftentimes we're driven by our own selfish desires rather than the pursuit of marriage that says, how can I please you, rather than how can I please me?
Yeah. Do you ever have those moments where you hear someone like a pastor or teacher talk about a passage of scripture that you probably have read 1,000 times, and they say something and you're like, I've never saw it that way. Yeah, that's clearly it. So I was listening to a Tim Keller series on marriage, and I think he did it in the early 90s. I guess it's his most popular series he's ever done.
Really?
And it's really, really good. But in it, he was talking about the whole series. I think it's 11 parts, and it's all from Ephesians 5, like verses 21 through whatever that would be, 26 maybe or something. And but in it, that's the passage where it says, wives, submit to your husbands, and husbands, love your wife as Christ loves the church. And he says he says in there, he goes, you need to understand that it calls for wives to submit. It does not call for husbands to make their wives submit. And he goes, a husband's only calling is to love. So like what he was separating is to saying, a woman absolutely has a calling, but that's from God. She's accountable to God. Your calling as a husband is to love, not to rule, but to love. And it was an interesting dynamic when he said that, where I thought, how often have we heard people go like, well, this person just doesn't do this. And his response was like, that's not your worry. That's between them and God. Are you loving?
Yeah.
And that is that part of, like, in marriage, we have to ask ourselves, am I doing the thing that God called me to do? Because that's service. Okay. So let's this is, I think, really good. So we've talked about in the business world, as in leadership, you're thinking, how can I love them, support them? In marriage, the same thing. How about relationships in general? Is it the exact same, or would you say like there's some other nuances to it? And how can we serve all the different dynamic relationships, from friendships sibling relationships, coworker relationships. And I would even say, how do we handle the relationships where someone annoys us? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's offense. Yeah. Maybe it's just not our personality types. Are we called to perpetually put ourselves in situations? So this Sunday, I'm going to be talking about reconciliation. So some of it's going to overlap with that. But like, are we called, if we're following Jesus, to consistently put us in positions where we're only serving and we're just basically again taken advantage of and we're annoyed?
Yeah. So I think, so many months ago when I talked, there was a sermon that I did. It was about just really friendships. It was actually the beginning of the year. This was just crazy to think. It didn't feel that long ago, but it was actually, I think, the second or third week of the year. But just talking about purpose relationships. It was the series we did on 5 things that basically would change your life. I don't remember. That was a paraphrase of the sermon series. But I think there's really 2 main ways to look at relationships. There's friendships, which I think are reciprocal in nature, in that you're offering friendship to someone, they add value to your life. Usually that person adds value to your life. And I'm not saying that's always on an equal plane, right? There's going to be times, just like in marriage, where you might be down and out and they're pouring a lot into you. And there's other seasons where it's the opposite, where they're down and out and you're pouring a lot into them, or, they're better at communication in one season and you're better at communication, all of those things. But there's some sense in which both of you are adding value to one another. And then I think there are relationships that I would put in the category of people that were called to bear witness to Christ, to serve them, where it's more one way, in the sense that we are giving something to them, realizing they might not have much to offer to us. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's helpful, and maybe that's an oversimplification because there's a lot of complicated variables with different relationships and how you might be connected, and if it's a family member and all those different things. But I think that's a number one, a helpful way to look at that. The friendship ones, I think it's important to say, okay, how is this person influencing me? There's a part of that where when we're talking about serving others and taking a posture of humility, that's always good. It's always good to have that posture, but we also need to realize there's a lot of impact that comes from the people that we hang out with. And it's not always necessarily from a spiritual standpoint, but it might be a person who, and I don't use this word in a flippant way, but toxic, like a very, very unhealthy pattern of behavior, the way that they speak, the way that they live, the things that they do, that might be a detriment to your life. And I think in those moments, you mentioned something earlier in the leadership conversation that I think is really important, because I was talking about the support side of it. You talked about the accountability and having hard conversations. Yeah. I think that's a part of loving people as well. And we've talked about this before. Them, the idea of both love as support and challenge, in that we care about them. They know that we care about them. But sometimes because we care about them, it means we have to have hard conversations. Yeah. It means we have to address things. And so if a person is the type of individual who has patterns of behavior that at the very least are annoying, and at worst case scenario are destructive to you, to someone else, to themselves, I think part of actually having the heart of Christ is being willing to have those types of hard conversations. Because a lot of times today, in today's age, right, we shy away from that stuff because we know it can be offensive. We know it can be volatile. We know it's uncomfortable. It's not convenient to have conversations. And especially, it's really
condemned in our culture because we're supposed to celebrate everyone's version of truth.
Absolutely. And it's even characterized oftentimes as being judgmental, right? But if we're trying to best represent the heart of Christ, which a part of that is the truth aspect. It is the grace. It is the support. It is the kindness. So our delivery matters. Our attitude, our motivations matter. But there are times where we have to have hard conversations with people. But I think the simple answer is no, I don't think we have to be. Number one, I think there's a logical problem of we just don't have the emotional and relational bandwidth to be best friends with everybody. Right. So I think it's okay to be selective. But again, when we're talking about friendship, we're talking about those where there is a reciprocal benefit. The people that I'm allowing closer access into my life are not the people that are going to be causing destruction, right? The people that have greatest access to my life are the people that are going to add value. They're going to have hard conversations. If I need to be called out on something, they're going to be the people that I go to if I need prayer, encouragement, or if I have to have a conversation because my marriage is struggling. I'm not going to give access like that to anyone. So I think it's okay to be selective with those individuals. And then again, I think we shift the dynamic with others in our lives. So whether it's a workplace relationship, whether it's an in-law, whoever it might be, we can say, okay, I'm not going to be able to be best friends with them, but what does it look like for me to serve them? What does it look like for me to model Christ to them in potentially the limited opportunities that I have? And again, part of that might be having a conversation at one point that's an uncomfortable conversation because you see something in them. But another part of that might simply be trying to be intentional in ways that you can serve them and love them practically.
Yeah, loved everything you said. Agree with it 100%. I'm going to add a little caveat to it too, is I think also we recognize that there will be some relationships that will be ministry. In the sense that we're called to minister to them, and they're not going to pour into our lives. We're pouring into them in that season. And so it's important that if there is a relationship that isn't, like, you just know, I'm not connecting, it's not adding value, to not disregard it immediately, but go to God and say, I'm asking the Holy Spirit to guide me. Is this someone that you want me to invest in? And if they do, if the Holy Spirit does, then you need to invest in them, because I think that is a major part of ministry and ministry mindset.
Absolutely.
Okay, a couple more I want to get to. I want to talk about parenting. I think parenting, this is my perception, and I know at the risk of sounding like the old grumpy guy, right? Like, I think our culture has, like, the pendulum swing of gone from unhealthy to unhealthy. I think the old unhealthy is, be quiet, you're there to be seen, not heard, not really pouring into your children. That's an old model to worshiping our kids, to where the whole family revolves around the children. It's their wants, their preferences, their activities. And I think that's super unhealthy. Where is healthy serving of your children in the sense of leading them, guiding them, investing in their lives? Really from the biblical. I'm not saying like in opposition to how it used to be or how it is, but just what is the biblical mindset of how, because like even in that Ephesians passage that I referenced about marriage, in that it talks about fathers really taking a posture of humility and not provoking your children, which I have to be really careful, because that is my humor. Like, my kids call me
to poke.
Yeah, I mean they'll say it laughing, so I'm appreciative that it's not a serious thing. Right. But they call me the gaslighter because they know I intentionally do it just as a humor. Like, I'll be smirking when I do it. And they'll go, there it is. Like, as I do it, and like they laugh. It's our humor. But in genuine truth, like, to not provoke, to not just demand your rights as a parent, but to serve. I mean, all Ephesians is really that passage of like, it starts with submit one to another, then it's wives to your husbands, husbands to your wife, even in the context of masters to servants, to fathers to children. Like, it's all the dynamics of the world can give you power, but Jesus is asking you to surrender that to serve. So what does that look like in a family where you're called on one sense to disciple, to mold them, to not give them a freedom to choose their pathway, but to guide that? How do you do that while still serving them and loving them? Yeah,
I mean, I think the simple answer is it's complicated, right? And it's a case by case thing. You know, I think about, even as you were talking, like the different personalities, and so like the ability to interact with them differently, and even being conscious of that. Like, so like right now you've heard about Project Fight, which we've talked about for a real long time now. Project Fight, for those listening, is just me basically roughhousing and wrestling my kids, and they love it. Like, I think it's one of those like bonding things. They feel close. But V, my oldest, I've realized the last few times we've done it, man, he is just super sensitive. So like, if I like tickle him, he gets mad. Like, he'll leave and be done with it. Whereas like Luca, I could throw him through a wall and he's like, he's legitimate. He would cry. He would cry and then come back and keep doing it. Like, just a different level of toughness. And so they're all a little bit different. And so part of that, I would say, is being able to tailor that, but even tailoring that is being attentive to your kids. I like that a lot. Yep. So like, being aware of your kids' personalities, being aware of what their needs actually are. So like, what one might need, another one might not need. Like, one might need a lot of affirmation and affection from you. Another one might just need, want you to be around and ask them a question here and there. Like, there's going to be differences, but I think I would summarize that by learning your kids, like having the intentionality to say, I care enough and love my kids enough that I want to learn their personalities. I want to learn even what's interesting to them, so that I can find ways to bond with them. V is right now, he's just obsessed with like Legos. So building stuff. So like, he'll build an airplane or build a dragster, and it's like, man, that's awesome. Like, that's so cool. You do such a good job building those things. Like, I told him the other day, and he like didn't believe me. I was like, I don't think I could have built those things when I was 7 years old. Like, I was building those things later on. You've built some really, really cool stuff, but just trying to be intentional ways where you're encouraging them. I think there's a tension though too. You mentioned it today, to go the extreme though, where we want to give our kids opportunities. We want to bless our kids with the best things, the best opportunities and toys and experiences and all of this stuff. And I'm learning for Makar and I, like we have to actually probably pull the reins back a little bit because we've seen some like where our kids have gotten to the point where they don't appreciate things the way that they should. And it's like, okay, we're going to pull back and you're going to learn to appreciate these things. So even in those moments, trying to be mindful of what are your kids learning?
Yeah.
And so not just, am I taking care of my kids' needs physically? Am I taking care of my kids' needs emotionally? But thinking in terms of, spiritually, like how are they learning these things? How are we having conversations about these topics? Even in discipline, like I'm naturally pretty tough. I'm naturally a disciplinarian. And so one of the things that I've had to do is not only learning my kids, but also realizing my own tendencies and saying, okay, I can't be heavy-handed. I can't always come in hot. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to crush the rebellion real quick, you know? But I've just realized like oftentimes that's counterproductive. It shuts things down. I've actually found, like, particularly for V, because of his personality and emotions, when I come at him in a more gentle tone, like after there's an emotional explosion from him or whatever, if I come and actually have a real gentle conversation with him, like he just responds so much more. He actually responds almost more in a posture of like, I'm sorry, Dad, for doing that. Like, it's almost like he feels more bad because I came at him in a spirit of gentleness. And so I think all of that is just, again, going back to the mindset of, what do my kids need? What are their unique personalities? How do I need to connect with them? How do I need to discipline them? Because it might be different from child to child. And I think a lot of that just stems from understanding how they're wired. And then like realizing my greatest goal isn't just to, give them the best in life again, but it is to shape them and to mold them and to teach them. And so just to think in terms of that.
Give you a more effective platform when they know that they're loved, that you're attentive to them, to be able to share the godly principles with them.
Right.
Yeah, I 100% agree. All right, I want to speak to this, but I want to ask a question before I forget it. So your boy, Carlo, he's young enough. He's probably not in Fight Club yet. What do you call it?
Project Fight.
Project Fight.
They named it that, by the way. I didn't name it that.
He's probably too young to be in it, but is Holland, is she a part of it?
She loves it. Holland loves it.
In mine, so my youngest, who's in 8th grade, she's a girl, and she wants to fight more than her brothers ever did. I mean, like, and when I say fight, I mean, like, she does not want me to go easy. It's like roughhousing where I'm trying to get her to tap out. She has so much strength that, like, she will, like, I have to stop the pressure because I'm like, well, you didn't tap out, but I'm not going to break your arm.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy. No, I was just saying, I love what you were saying about learning their personalities, because I would say that's the number one thing I had to learn as a parent. So I was like you in the sense of, like, it was easy for me to come in as a disciplinarian, to come in hot. I basically had one tool in my toolbox, and it was, I'm bigger than you. I can intimidate you. Not so much a screamer. That's not my bent.
Sure.
Though I can, like, give a tone that lets you know, like, this is not going to fly. But I realized, like, that one tool is not the most effective tool. It's not the most Christ-like tool in some of the situations. And so I had to learn my kids' personalities, and they all are all different. I mean, like, my daughter, if I come in, even like any form of correction with her is hard for her. Like, I mean, her cheeks flush. She won't make eye contact with me. Her posture will change. I mean, she will literally do this. And I'm talking about, if I go, hey, what you're doing is wrong, stop that. It's like, you would think I just screamed and called her a name or something. And so I've had to learn, it's not that I can't discipline her, I just learn how to do it. And like all my sons, it's interesting in their personalities, even as they get older, you look at them and you go, man, like, they're all so different.
Sure.
And so I do think it is a true service to take the time to get to know that, so you can speak their language. And it's like the same thing I was saying earlier with my wife, learning how she responds, what makes her feel loved, is service, even while then figuring out, in that situation with my kids, I have to mold them. I have to shape them. I am the authority. And so I have to find a way to do both. And like you said earlier, Jesus' ways are better, but they're difficult. They're hard. And so that is a challenge. Okay. Couple other quick questions. I mean, your kids have such big personalities, which I absolutely love with that. Do they wrestle with each other, or is that a no-no because it will just go nuts?
So right now we're dealing with the dynamic. The boys are pretty good most of the time. So for those who don't know, so V and Luca is who I'm referring to. V is going to be 8 later on this year. Luca's about to turn 6.
Okay.
And then Holland's 4. Carlo will be a year and a month. It's September 22nd. So our 2 older boys, they get along most of the time pretty well. Every once in a while, they'll kind of goof off wrestling with each other. And I don't mind. Like I don't care. I'll let them do that. But right now we're dealing with a dynamic where both of them are just really mean to Holland. Like they're just all the time. Like, so it's this dynamic where they're badgering her. They're like, like making fun of her, pushing trying to get on, pushing her buttons. And then she is like over the top dramatic for them. So like she's not in general all the time, but if they like just touch her on the shoulder, it's like, they just basically punched her. Like that's how she acts. So we're dealing with that tension right now, but most of the time they get along pretty well with each other than the 2 boys in Holland.
Well, Carlo, he walked probably 2 Sundays ago. It's the first time I had seen him walk. Mm-hmm. He is the smallest human I've ever seen walk. And I jokingly said, like, it was just survival of the fittest. Like with having young siblings around them, like, for sure, if I'm going to survive, I have to do this.
But I got to adapt quickly.
Yeah, he was just like walking around the room.
Oh, it looks like, hilarious.
Well, he's so little. I mean, he's not little for his size. He's just walking early.
Yeah, just
and so you're like, whoa, dude, that's incredible.
Oh, man.
So,
yeah, they're wild.
One quick final question is, okay, so we've talked about in leadership, we've talked about in marriage, relationships, we've talked about with parenting. How about just in our community? I think one of the negatives, a trend in our community is it used to be much more people sat on porches, people knew their neighbors. Honestly, the invention of the car, garages, people pull into the garage. They don't hang out on their porches. They don't see their neighbors. They don't know them. But yet we're called to impact legitimately our communities, our neighbors. What's your thoughts on that? How can we serve well in our community to represent Jesus? And I'm not even saying necessarily correct something that we're doing that's wrong, unless I'm talking about not doing something. Mm-hmm. What are the things that we can start to do to serve our community well? Yeah,
I mean, I think even in your question, you were already hinting at it. I think we have to get out of the seclusion mindset. And I'm going to be honest, the older that I get, the more I struggle with this actually, because I think being in ministry, like being around people all day, and then even just like when you come home, there's times where like, I want to spend time with my wife and my kids. Like, I don't want to deal with anybody else. Like, you know what I mean? I'm good for the week. But I think getting out of that seclusion mindset and trying to be present with the people around you, whether it's the neighbors, if you're in an apartment complex, like just trying to get to know people. I mean, that's really one of the themes that we've talked about this whole time. Like if you're in leadership, getting to know your employees, in marriage, getting to know your spouse, kids, getting to know their personalities. Like it is that otherness mindset where I care enough about the people around me that I want to get to know them, because God cares about them and God values them. I should also value them and care about them. And so even just having that basic posture, but I think looking for opportunities to be hospitable, I think is one of the ways where, again, you're even having that posture of like, hey, come on over. Like we actually just last night, I invited our neighbors over. They didn't end up coming because they got home from soccer practice pretty late and, with school starting and everything. But I had invited them over. We were doing a fire. We have a fire pit kind of back in the woods. And we had told the kids the night prior we would do s'mores. And so his wife is out of town right now. And so he has 3 kids. And I just said to him, I said, hey, if you guys want to come over, we're having a fire tonight. We're going to do s'mores if you want to bring the kids over. So I think like just little things like that, those small moments of hospitality, offering friendship. And then if you see specific needs, I think that's a general principle for Christians. If we see a need that we can fill, if we see a need that we can help with, it goes a long way with people. I mean, I remember years ago, the first house Makar and I ever lived at, we had neighbors that lived across the street, very sweet people. One day I think he was putting together like a basketball hoop or something. And it was just a simple thing. I said, hey, like, do you need any help with that? Cause it looked like he was struggling. And he ended up, I think he like wrote a card and gave us a gift card or something. And I remembered thinking, wow, that seems like a weird thing to do. But it dawned on me, we're in a culture where like that type of stuff is so foreign to people that it was apparently a big deal to him, even though like it didn't seem like that big of a deal to me. So I think those little things of like just looking to get to know people, having a culture of hospitality, and looking for specific needs that might even be small things like, helping put a basketball hoop together, but offering that helping hand. And we've had some great neighbors over the years too. I don't want this to be like me boasting, because we've had neighbors that have honestly in many ways been even a greater blessing to us, where they've bent over backwards to do acts of kindness and generosity. And it just builds a healthy relationship between you and them.
All right. Well, do you have any other advice you want to give for people of how to serve?
No, I just think it's what we've been saying, right? I think, ask God to help you to have open eyes every day to look around you, whether that's your kids, whether that's your spouse, whether that's your coworkers or the people that you're leading or your neighbors. That every day there's opportunities to see people, to make them feel seen, to make them feel loved. And I know it's very hard because lives are busy. We have things going on. We have responsibilities. We're trying to get from point A to point B. I get that as good as anyone does, but it's that constant reminder of just to be present to the reality of life around you and asking like, God, what might you want to do in these relationships and in these people that you've placed around me?
It's good, man. Thank you for the discussion today.
Yeah, man, it's been a good conversation.